If you think canceling a man's show is the same as canceling what he knows, watch what happens when the cameras are still rolling and the host has nothing left to lose. Stephen Colbert has been preparing for this night his entire career. Not the night CBS ends the most watched program in late night. Not the night a sitting president logs onto the internet to celebrate the death of a television show. The night after. The night when every calculation that kept a voice careful and measured and strategic simply evaporates because the thing those calculations were protecting no longer exists. That is the night the room feels different before the first light comes up. That is the night the audience doesn't laugh when they're supposed to. That is the night a man walks onto his own stage, and the applause that greets him sounds less like celebration and more like mourning that hasn't decided yet what it's mourning. He walks out slowly, not the walk of a performer arriving. Not the wide-armed entrance engineered to peak the energy in the room. This walk is deliberate in the way that a man moves when he has decided, sometime in the hours before dawn, that he is going to tell the truth regardless of what it costs. The Ed Sullivan Theater, which has absorbed decades of noise and laughter and manufactured spontaneity, goes quiet in a way that production veterans who have worked this building for 15 years will later describe as something they have never experienced inside these walls. A floor director standing near the stage left curtain holds his headset in his hand instead of wearing it. A camera operator on the center crane keeps her lens on Colbert's face and does not cut away, not for 30 seconds, not when the director in the booth is calling for the wider shot. He sits. He doesn't look at the desk. He looks at the audience. Not the way a host looks at a crowd, scanning for energy, for warmth, for permission. He looks the way a person looks when they need a room full of strangers to understand something true before a single word is spoken. Then he begins, not loud, lower than usual. The kind of voice that makes a room lean forward rather than sit back. 3 days ago, he says, I called something what it was. He pauses. The room absorbs it. I called a $16 million settlement between a sitting president and the company that signs my paychecks. The company that owns this theater, this desk, this chair. I called that what it is in plain English. And now I'm told this show is ending. CBS said it was financial. CBS said the landscape of late-night television is challenging. CBS said the decision had nothing to do with the content of the program or the man who delivered it. Colbert nods when he repeats this, slowly, the nod of a man who has spent 30 years watching institutions explain themselves and has learned to read the gap between the explanation and the truth. Then, the screen behind him flickers to life. A single date, July 14th, the night he said it. The night he stood at this same desk and said the words big, fat bribe with the measured calm of a man who had already decided the cost was worth paying. Then a second date, July 17th, the cancellation announcement. 3 days, 72 hours between the sentence and the verdict. I'm not going to tell you those two dates are connected, Colbert says. His voice doesn't rise. I'm going to show you what they look like when you put them next to each other. And I'm going to let you decide what you see. A woman in the fourth row presses her knuckles against her closed mouth. A man 2 seats to her left stops writing in the small notebook he brought. The band behind Colbert holds their instruments without playing. Even the applause sign, which has been part of this theater's visual architecture for decades, stays dark. A door near the stage right curtain opens. A former CBS production executive walks out. She worked for the network for 19 years. Her name is not important to her testimony. What is important is what she was asked to do in a meeting she attended 4 days before the cancellation announcement. A meeting she was not supposed to be in. A meeting she stayed in because the door had already closed behind her, and leaving would have announced her presence more than remaining. She stands at a microphone that has been set up near the desk. Her voice is controlled in the way that voices are controlled when the alternative is breaking entirely. I was asked, she says, and stops. Starts again. I was asked to prepare language, official language, that would frame the show's end as a financial decision. The room makes no sound. I was asked to have that language ready before the conversation with the host had taken place. Colbert doesn't look at her. He looks at the desk. His jaw works once, tightening, releasing, and then goes still. That's not a financial decision, he says quietly. That's architecture. Someone built the announcement before they made the decision. That's not cancellation. That's architecture. Trump had posted on Truth Social within hours of the announcement. The exact words, "I absolutely love that Colbert got fired," are displayed on the screen without commentary. Next to them, a timeline. The FCC approval for Paramount's merger with Skydance. Pending. The settlement, $16 million plus $15 million in public service announcements promoting causes the president personally endorses. The cancellation, 3 days after the broadcast. The merger approval process, still active, still pending, still requiring the cooperation of the administration that just publicly celebrated the removal of its loudest critic from the airwaves. The geometry of it doesn't need narration. Colbert lets it sit on the screen and says nothing for 11 seconds. A camera catches his hands on the desk. Flat, still, not gripping, simply resting there the way a man rests his hands when he has decided he is not going to perform composure. He is simply going to be composed. A second figure enters from the same door. He worked in Paramount's Regulatory Affairs Division. He handled communications between the company's executive team and the FCC during the merger review process. He attended meetings. He took notes. The notes, printed on plain paper, 22 pages, time-stamped, are placed on Colbert's desk by a production assistant who has worked the show for 6 years and whose hands are not entirely steady. The conversation about the show, the man says, came up in the context of the merger, not separately, in the context of it, as a... He stops, looks at the ceiling, returns. As a demonstration of good faith. A demonstration of good faith. The phrase moves through the room the way smoke moves. Not all at once, but seeping in until every corner of the space contains it. A man in the 7th row, gray-haired, wearing a sports jacket, shakes his head once, just once, slowly. A woman near the aisle puts both hands over her ears for a moment and then lowers them. Not because she doesn't want to hear, because her body needed somewhere to put the weight of what she just heard. Trump's posts appear in sequence on the screen now. Not just the celebration, but the follow-up, posted on Christmas Eve, weeks after the cancellation announcement, when Colbert was still broadcasting. Stephen Colbert is a pathetic train wreck, with no talent or anything else necessary for show business success. And then, CBS should put him to sleep. Now. It is the humanitarian thing to do. And then, if network newscasts and their late-night shows are almost 100% negative to President Donald J. Trump, shouldn't their very valuable broadcast licenses be terminated? I say, yes. Colbert reads them aloud. All of them, without editorial comment. His voice is flat and clean, the way a forensic examiner's voice is flat and clean when they are describing evidence that does not require embellishment. Then he closes the folder on his desk. Here is what I want to say, he begins. And the room stills itself completely, the way rooms still themselves when they understand that what comes next is the thing that cannot be unsaid. I'm not angry at CBS. I meant that when I said it. The people I work with, 200 of them, many of whom are watching right now, they are extraordinary. This theater has been a privilege. Every night I got to sit at this desk was a night someone let me do the thing I believe matters most, which is stand up in public and say what is true. His breathing is visible. His chest rises and doesn't immediately fall. What I am, he says, is clear. For the first time in a long time, I am just completely clear. He turns and looks directly into the camera. Not the monitor, the lens. You tried to buy the silence. You went through the proper channels, used the proper language, called it financial, made it clean. But here is what you could not buy. This hour, tonight. The one where the thing you paid to prevent gets said anyway, in front of everyone, with the documents on the desk, and the dates on the screen, and the witnesses standing right here. He touches the folder. That's not courage. That's just math. You took the show. The show was already over. What you couldn't take was the last one. The audience doesn't erupt. They don't cheer. One person stands, a woman near the center, maybe 60 years old, hands coming together slowly and deliberately. Then, 2 more. Then the sound builds from the floor up, not the manufactured wave of a cued applause track, but the real thing, the kind that starts in the chest of a person who has no other way to say what they're feeling except to bring their hands together. The kind that sounds, when it reaches full volume, less like a celebration than a verdict. Colbert stands, doesn't raise his hands, doesn't smile, stands the way a man stands when he has finished saying everything that needed to be said and is content to let the room carry the rest. Outside the Ed Sullivan Theater that night, a crowd has gathered, handmade signs. Colbert stays, truth stays. The kind of protest that doesn't arrive organized. The kind that arrives because people heard something was ending that shouldn't end, and they needed somewhere to stand. By midnight, the clips are already moving. Not just the monologue, the specific moment, the 11 seconds of silence with the dates on the screen, the geometry of it. The word used twice. It spreads in segments, each one traveling at its own speed, each one finding a different audience who arrives at the same conclusion from a different direction. A teacher in Ohio watches it at 1 a.m. and doesn't go back to sleep. A journalist in London cues it 3 times, stopping at the same frame each time. By morning, 4 networks have replayed the timeline graphic and surrounded it with commentary that circles the edges of what Colbert said, without quite saying it themselves. Trump's counterposts escalate through the night, each one longer than the last. The capital letters multiply, but every denial is screenshotted and placed next to the clip it responds to. And the juxtaposition requires no analysis, only eyes. Months later, the FCC approval will still be pending. The merger will still be under review. The documented timeline. July 14th, July 17th, the meetings, the prepared language, the notes on 22 pages will still be sitting, unrebutted, in a folder that was placed on a desk in front of a live audience and a camera that didn't cut away. The show ends in May. The architecture stands, but what was built inside it on this night, the record of it, the shape of it, the specific human weight of 2 witnesses standing in a theater that was supposed to be silenced, that is the thing that doesn't end when the credits roll. Colbert said it himself quietly before the applause finished and the lights changed, not as a closing line, as a fact. Silence doesn't protect anyone. It just makes the people who enforce it more comfortable. If tonight changed how you see what power actually costs, subscribe and turn on notifications. The next truth is already on the table.